And few have been more dedicated to defending that future than Charlie Kirk, who's been on the front lines of this battle for years.
You even graduate college? You know,
no.
You know
in
this
fact,
guy didn't graduate college?
I didn't go to college. I've been able to be pretty successful without a four-year degree.
College.
Yeah, I did not go to college.
You're going to come to college and act like you know.
So are we gonna debate resumes or ideas?
Ideas.
Most college degrees are meaningless, and most of you guys are being totally scammed by being here.
No.
Now, let me further complete the point.
So getting educated is a scam.
First of all, it's not always an education, and you are perfect evidence that you haven't really been educated. What have you actually learned at this institution except that you're the center of the world and everyone must listen to you?
This week, I caught up with Charlie at Texas A&M on his American Comeback Tour to discuss what needs to be done today in order to ensure a stronger tomorrow. Well, Charlie, we're here on the campus of Texas A&M. Tell us what's about to happen here, what you're doing here, because you're doing this all over the country on different college campuses.
I've been doing this for 12 years, as you know, going to college campuses, trying to spread the word of conservatism and patriotism and liberty. And the last couple of years, we've just seen our crowds and the enthusiasm skyrocket. And I have to give President Trump such enormous credit for that. They're here to have conversation, to hear the other side, because understand that most of these college campuses are very predominantly liberal. And when a conservative now comes on campus, they want to hear the other perspective.
You're doing it all over the country because you've actually called colleges indoctrination factories.
Yes.
What did you mean by that, and how do we fix it?
Look, indoctrination factories, I mean by that is that they believe diversity is everyone looks different but thinks the same. Our conservative students on campuses, they don't feel as if they feel as if they speak out for their belief system, that they'll be graded down or they'll be smeared or slandered. Just recently, we had many Turning Point USA students be physically confronted and physically violated. For example, in Dallas, we had this happen. We had this at University of California, Davis, where our Turning Point group was actually attacked by an Antifa group. Universities are not about the pursuit of knowledge. They're about the forceful pushing of a left-wing worldview, and we're here to shake it up.
So many people look at what you're doing and say it's very important to give conservatives a space on these college campuses so they feel like they actually have an ability to speak out and they feel, like they're among people with like-minded ideas.
Totally. And increasingly what we find at Turning Point USA is that we are more than half of the body politic now on campus. These universities are actually now out of alignment with their very students. It used to be, when I first started this over a decade ago, it was universities liberal, students liberal. Okay, now it's okay, universities liberal, students not so liberal. Students leaning more conservative, which is just a promising sign.
Charlie, you've been willing to sit down with people who have differing views from you. You're willing to take questions at these events you have from any and everyone.
That's right. Well, free speech is our birthright as Americans. When you have free speech, we're going to get closer to the truth, closer to the best way to govern, closer to the best polity for the country. And here in college campuses, they're not places of free speech. They are islands of totalitarianism. And these students are just begging to see a collision of ideas. They want to see what is a conservative versus a liberal. Have I not heard the other side? And so I've sat down with Bill Maher. I've sat down with Gavin Newsom. I sit down with a lot of liberals here on campus. And you learn a lot about the other side. You learn to see if we have common ground. And sometimes we really don't have common ground. The left does not believe in freedom of speech. They believe in the clamping down of other ideas. They believe in censorship. We believe that all ideas should be heard, and we believe because of that, our ideas will win. What
do you make of Bill Maher and people very similar to Bill Maher actually thinking more like Charlie Kirk than maybe we ever imagined we'd see?
I take no credit for it. It's to his credit. He was always intellectually against the woke regime at great consequence. And so, sitting down with him in the podcast was, quite honestly, a lot of fun. It was great.
You had more moral courage than pastors that I know that went along with the woke crazy train, and you deserve credit for that because it was of high cost.
Until we get rid of that, they're never going to win another election.
I agree.
We have much different worldviews when it comes to Christianity and religion. We talked about that in a very spirited fashion, but that's what America is all about. It should be where people that have different religious beliefs, different political beliefs 90% of the time can still sit down and have a cordial discussion and conversation. I believe that's how America is going to heal.
Do you think 2024 marked the end of the old Democrat Party?
I don't know where they are. I mean, AOC and Bernie Sanders are flying all over the country. They're trying to do their whole, fighting oligarchy tour. And I'm not even sure where the base of the Democrat Party is. The equivalent of this would be if Democrats in the election cycle were able to go to deep red areas and be able to draw these types of crowds and this type of support. They're not. And so what we see is in areas where Democrats used to win with 80%, 90% of the vote, it's become much more competitive, and that massive movement has resulted in President Trump's triumphant victory in November. They should learn, first and foremost, don't run on an agenda that's against American values. It seems like they're actually doubling and tripling down on these incredibly unpopular radical positions that they've been presenting to the American people. I would love to see the Democrat Party at least moderate, because it's better for the country, actually. Because at some point we might not be in power. They're obsessed with DEI. They're obsessed with the racial tribalization of this country. And that stuff was resolutely defeated on the ballot box. There was a referendum.
Are there things that you think that parents should still be aware of that are going on in their kids' classrooms that maybe we aren't aware of right now?
Even though the country has moved significantly to the right, a lot of these classrooms and a lot of the curriculum have not adjusted. So you have to be on the lookout for inappropriate curriculum. The hyper-racialization or the race obsession is still being taught to kids all across the country. So parents have to be vigilant, they have to be involved, and we see it here on these campuses, the outgrowth and the consequence of what happens when we don't actually engage in the K through 12 fight. But I think parents are really starting to wake up. An unattended blessing out of COVID were millions of families that started to ask critical questions about what their kids were learning, and also taking their kids out of some of these public schools and these government-run schools and homeschooling or putting them in better private schools.
There are some out there who argue that conservatives are behind culturally. You've actually said that online you feel like conservatives are ahead of the game. What do you mean by that?
I think that we're actually winning when it comes to Gen Z, when it comes to TikTok has been really helpful for this. It's President Trump that led the way. He showed the example of what it's like to engage and to reach out to the younger generation. The MAGA hat went from a symbol of poison on campus, where radioactivity. It's a symbol of patriotism and of hope and one of connectivity and purpose. And so I do think that we're starting to win the cultural battle. I think a lot of Democrats are realizing that. We have a lot of work to do. What we are doing right here will dictate an election 5 years from now. It will determine an election 10 years from now. We at Turning Point believe that elections are effects. We want to be the cause.
What do we think is going to happen in 2028? What do we think is going to happen down the line when President Trump is no longer on the ballot?
It's hard to predict or conjecture that far out, but that's why we're also going as hard as we can right now. We are doing more campus stops this semester than even during the election. President Trump is not going to be able to carry us all in 2028. We're trying to keep the movement going, because in some ways, if we just kind of closed up shop, we said, oh, we'll do this again in 2028, where does all this energy go? Right. Where does all this enthusiasm go? So we want to build this up and actually have no dip in energy and actually have this be a year-over-year continuation of President Trump's triumph in November.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.